Hello, and welcome to another session on open source on IBM. I'm Matt Seeberger, the Bearded Geek. Today, I want to show you how to set up SSH, connect to your system with SSH and Visual Studio Code, and how to configure Bash and make it friendly. Let's jump right in. Okay, so what I wanted to do here is I want to kind of give people an introduction to kind of starting to play with open source. I know when I first started out, it is a little bit of a different world if you're coming from RPGCL, some of that arena. So here we have my command prompt. I'm running a Windows 10 here, and I have already gone into the system and set up SSH. You can look up how to do that if you don't have that already installed. Another option would be to use or install Git, and you can use Git Bash from your Windows box or um, Windows subsystem on Linux when you can run Ubuntu on your system. Okay, but today I'm just going to show you basically from the command prompt. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to generate an SSH key. So we'll do SSH-keygen, hit enter, and we can give the file name something different, but I just leave it at the RD or the ID underscore RSA. We can just skip the passphrase. Okay, and so basically that's going to create a .ssh folder in our user directory. And we have our private key and our public key. So if we were to look at this in Notepad, so open up on my other screen, you can see this whole key right here. Okay, so what we need to do is get this key onto our IBM. So there's several ways to do that. I'm going to show you one in particular, maybe more than one, but I'll start out with this one. So this is ILE editor or IL editor. This is Liam Allan's project. He actually has IL editor 2 now that he worked on, which is a pay product. This one is free. So I came in here and created a host to my IBM. I'm going to open up this connection. Okay, and basically I want to browse the IFS. So here it loads my IFS. The user I want to be connecting to the system with is Matt Dev. So I'm going to go to the home directory, and there is an .ssh folder in here and authorized keys. So when you're first setting this up, you're not going to have this folder in here. But what you can do is just right-click, create a directory, do .ssh, and then come into the directory and create the authorized keys file here. Formaserve has a great video that goes a little bit more in depth on this process and how to set the permissions and everything if you get any errors on that, so I'd highly recommend checking that out. All right, so basically I want to double click to open this file. Okay, so here we can see I've got my keys. I'm going to take this new one that I generated and I'm going to paste it right in here. I'm going to save that back to the system and I'm going to minimize that. Okay, so now if I come back here and I do SSH Matt Dev at, you can use your host name, but in this case I'm going to use the IP address. It's going to prompt me if I want to, am I sure I want to connect? Just say yes. It's going to add it to the list of known hosts, and here you can see I wasn't prompted for a password. I get the prompt. I can look at my working directory. If I do a ls-al, you can see all the files that are in here which matched what was in the IL editor program. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to install open source on our IBM. So if I come over here to ACS and I select my system, go to Tools, Open Source Package Management, I'm going to put in my user, and here I can actually select the key that we just generated so that it won't prompt me for password. I can hit OK. Okay, and in this case I had already installed the open source base program, or I'd run the base piece. So really, when you come in here the first time, it's just going to connect to your system and then automatically start running, or I think it prompts you, but after that it'll start running the initial setup to get all of these packages installed for you. And this basically just sets up yum, RPM, a few things that are required for that, and bash. So from here, I could check for updates. I can see what other available packages are out there. You can see there's 365 available. Okay, so we know that's on the system. So that's all set up and configured, which is great. So now if I wanted to, set up bash, what I would do is in this case, I'm going to use run SQL scripts. You could do this a different way if you wanted to, but here I'm going to set the default path or the default shell for the user. So I can either do current user, I can name a specific user. So star current is whatever user is connected to the system, in this case Matt Dev, or I can set it as the default for the entire system. I'm going to go that route. You can go whichever route makes sense for you, but I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I'm just going to execute that. Okay, and it looks like I've lost my connection. Okay, I had lost my connection, so I'm going to go ahead and reconnect. Or you can hit Control F11. Okay, now I'm going to run this. Okay, so if we want to see what's actually in place, you can come in here and look at, this is the default right here, QSys. So we can see that that's in place. So now if I come over here and I type exit and I SSH back to the box, now you can see I'm using bash. But we want to make bash a little bit more user-friendly here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set up my default path. So I'm going to create a .profile document, which we'll use extensively as we develop in open source. Okay, so basically that puts this path into a .profile file in my home directory. You would put something like this if you wanted a custom or a global, path for Node.js, and based on the user. Okay, so then now I'm going to go in and I'm going to customize bash to make it have better history and make it a little bit more friendly. Okay, so here you see we got command not found. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit again. Going to connect back to my system. I'm going to run this one more time. So now you can see that that path did take effect, and now it does know where the open source environment is. So I'm going to hit yes to install that package. I'm going to add this config manager. Okay, I already have that in place. Okay, I'm just going to clean up the metadata. Now I'm going to install the IBM dot files. That's done. And I'm going to overwrite the files. I'll put in my name and email later. Okay, so now if we exit and we come back in, you'll see that my prompt has changed and I have a little bit better history. You'll get a little bit better options with this setup now. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show you all is Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to open that. And I've seen this in a few other videos, and I just wanted to highlight how to set this up. So there is an extension called SSH FS, So I'm going to go ahead and search for that and install it. Okay. Now that gives me this configuration option. I'm going to go in and create configuration. So, okay. So I just name of my system. The IP is 172.23.668. Port. Username. I'm going to just put my user in here. Okay. My key, I'm going to point to my SSH file here and save it. Okay, so now if I go in and I hit this plus folder here, it's going to make a connection and it's going to add that, and this is actually the IFS on my IBM. So pretty cool. Now I can come in here, check out all these files. If I needed to make a change, say I needed to add another SSH key, I can do that. And this is the same thing that's on the system. And I never once had to touch the green screen. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have any questions or want to know anything further, just drop me a line in the comments and click subscribe, and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.